This was probably my favorite of the three, even though I think Long and Long Ago was the best of them. It's about your time in as a bank teller. Uh, there are several characters and scenes. They're almost like vignettes, and it all leads to your ultimate firing or being laid off. Uh, Speak a little bit about that. There's a bunch of great scenes. Some of them involve nudity. Um, there's I believe there's a recreation of a scene that you had in True Life where this one, I think she's a Spanish woman. She tries to get you to have sex with her, and she puts a key down her bra and locks you in a room, and then you get it out and tie her up and get out of that situation. But then you're shortly fired after that.
Well, this is about working in a bank, and I actually this time I think used the real bank name because it's been defunct now for over a quarter century. It's called Columbia Federal Savings Bank, um, and it's a it's basically in a lot of ways it's very similar in construction to Long and Long Ago. Instead of my family, though, it's the people I worked with at the bank. A lot of the tellers who were in their early 20s, as I was 30 years ago or 31 years ago now, and there's a couple of there's a scumbag, older Puerto Rican woman who was my supervisor, and yeah, it's from True Life. I changed the circumstances a little bit. In real life, I had to escape the room out a window, which was I wrote in True Life. But here I just for dramatic purposes, Danny walks out the door after having tied her up and pretending that he's attracted to her. But it like with a Long and Long Ago, and you know, if if God were alive, and a few other of these longer plays, um, there's not any dramatic arc, and this is a good example. Even though it's a comedy, it has some dramatic moments of you don't need melodrama. We've talked before about how some of even the great playwrights, the modernist playwrights, resort to melodrama in their plays. You know, someone has a secret, someone they don't want this to get out or whatnot. And in here we just see a lot of scenes of the people interacting. Danny initially is trained by two tellers, one an older Italian one named Bernadette, and then there's this beautiful uh, girl named Maureen Gonzalez, who everyone calls Mo, and those two plus another older foul-mouthed woman named Rose are sort of like they call themselves the Four Musketeers there at the bank. They were very friendly, and in real life, those are the three other people that most affected me. But then there's some interesting side characters. There's a black girl who works there that Danny tries to mesmerize, and then there's a short paranoid kid who gets robbed and becomes even more paranoid. And there's there's a couple of girls, one that Danny does have sex with, a blonde frizzy girl who's a hot little number who's drinking, and Danny ends up having to she gets dumped in his lap basically by her best friend who also works at the bank, who's a real snooty type. And then there's even a girl who was having an affair with one of the bank managers there, and she's like, now I call him Dicky in the play, and he's like, now you listen to Dick, Dick's got something important to say, everyone listen to Dick.
I thought that the communion of the workplace was interesting. I don't think I've seen that in drama before.
Well,
But it does exist. The people do get close to each other, and
oh,
uh, even if they don't become close friends, they do develop sort of a camaraderie.
yeah, and I to a certain degree we see some of that in some of the other plays that deal with his working at Five Fest supermarket. But here, I only worked there for 8.5, 9 months, and those people left an impact on me, especially the girl Mo, the other two older ladies too. But the character of Mo Gonzalez was one of these people that I don't think I'd ever written about her. I may, in true life, I may have mentioned the character as a minor character just in the scene there. Uh, but she was this really beautiful girl. I mean, she was almost as curvaceous and boobalicious as the Francine character in one of the Big Four plays. But uh, there was something she was always. She had this boyfriend that she was always having issues with and whatnot. And there were many times when she seemed to be flirting with me or to be interested in me or like me and wanted something more. But it never seemed to happen. And she could never bring herself, apparently, to uh, divest herself. And it's sort of like that's one of those few females that I wonder sometimes what might have happened. Uh, and in the end, the last thing we see of her is see her legs as she's walking away outside the bank. That's the last Danny sees of her. Um, but there are a lot of interesting scenes, and there are a lot of characters. There's a girl named Lupe Lopez, and uh, there's a guy Joey Notorious. No, Johnny Notorious, uh, and and so it's again putting together these funny little scenes, boom, 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 and then later on, some of these characters that have been well developed in their scenes with Danny, they meet and you see how they interact, and it gives a real slice of life about the way people are or were.